I had my nose waxed. Ow!
Oh
my God! So when it comes to decontamination, right? Getting the fallout, overspray, anything that's stuck to your car, old bird crap, bug guts, of the clays and the clay mitt, what is your favorite, Dave?
I prefer the visco clay. With the geo impression tool, I find this to be a phenomenal tool for decontaminating the paint. It's a plastic wrapper on, you'll peel off first, one on both sides.
Always remember to peel off the wrapper.
Geo impression tool is what made the marks originally in here, and will continue to make the marks as I use it. It's fantastic for on flat surfaces. If I get into an area that's some contours, I'll often just use my fingers. After using it part of a panel, the impressions are gone. I can reactivate them with the tool.
When it gets full of whatever crud you're pulling off the car, you know, a lot of times it's sort of orange from the typical metallic particles.
I fold it in half. I'll squeeze it.
How many cars do you get out of a clay bar like that?
It depends on the cars I'm doing. Have they been clayed before? Are they well maintained or not? I'd say a dozen cars possibly, but it all depends on the car itself.
You know, in our clay family, the visco clay is our most aggressive clay. It seems to pull the gnarliest stuff off,
yes.
Right? Do you ever find that it scratches or mars the finish?
Lightly. If I'm going to polish a car and I know I'm going to polish a car, I'm not so overly concerned about it.
Right.
If it's a car that I'm going to put a coat of wax on, sealant, glaze, then I'm more careful when I use more lubricant as I work the clay. Right. And I will not then get all the marring.
Scotty, what do you think?
Adam, I like the clay mitt.
Tell me why.
It's my favorite. Very controllable. One of the main things is if you drop any of your fine grade clay or visco clay in the ground, you're literally going to have to throw it out.
Bingo,
it's going to get trashed. This I can dunk right in my wash bucket, rinse it right back off again, and go back to claying. So I also find it very fast. It's easy to use, very controllable. I can still get in all the nooks and crannies by using my fingers in it, and it'll cover a large surface area quickly.
Yeah, and I love the fact, like you said, you know, a clay bar is about this big, but a clay mitt is that big. So you really get a lot of surface area.
Really do.
Have you ever done it on a hot vehicle and had some of this rubber transfer to the paint?
I have, yes.
And you thought, oh my gosh.
I think the world's going to end, but it doesn't.
Right?
So, yeah.
Because what do you do to get it off? Use a little polish, use a little brilliant glaze?
Polish, you could use a little tire and rubber cleaner. It'll come right off.
Okay, gotcha. Do you find that this is good for taking bugs off the front of the cars?
I do. I think it's aggressive enough, yet it still won't mar your surface, and it'll remove bugs. Overspray, I've had good luck with it.
Great.
So.
Do you do the glass?
I do. I always clay the glass.
Always.
I clay body panels, I clay headlights, taillights, glass. I always clay. I clay every surface of the car.
How about when you're doing wheels? You know, I know that, you know, at auto dermatology, you pull the wheels off the car and you get serious about your detailing. Do you go ahead and clay the wheels out before you do them?
I do clay the wheels, yes.
You do?
Yeah. I'll clay them before polishing.
Same tool.
Exactly.
Okay. On the wheels, when you pull the wheels off, do you find yourself claying out the barrels of the wheels too?
I do, yes.
So
I do the faces and the barrels.
Same tool.
Yes.
Now, how about, let's say the car's wet. Would you go ahead and take this clay mitt, blast down the wet car with a little bit of detail spray, and go ahead and clay it while it's wet before you dry it?
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. It's a time saver for me.
Yeah.
And it's a lot faster. The vehicle's already wet, it's already lubricated, and you can just go ahead and knock it out.
All right, Kyle, what are you voting for?
I personally like the fine grade clay. In here you have 200-gram clay bars. It's more of a natural clay. Both tools are really effective. The visco clay, you could use it over and over again. It has a ton of elasticity. The clay mitt is super fast and super easy to use and extremely effective. I personally like this because if you're going through and polishing out your vehicle, you're gonna clay the vehicle once well with either a visco or a clay mitt. Once the vehicle's polished and protected, kind of like a maintenance clay, the finer grade is a really soft clay. It's gonna not damage the paint as much as a visco or the clay mitt. If your car is really heavily contaminated, this is not the product for you. This is kind of a maintenance or something that's garage kept that you just have a very, very fine amount of contamination. It's not gonna have the same elasticity to go back into shape like the synthetic visco clay.
One of the things that I like about this clay is that it's inexpensive, you know, and you get 2 bars in your jar, which is cool. Oops.
So if you drop one, you've got another.
Right, backup tool, your backup deal was cool. When we developed this product, we actually sent it to you for your reviews and testing.
Yes.
And you thought, Thumbs up.
Absolutely thumbs up.
Yeah.
It's a great fine grade clay. I've actually used it on a coated vehicle without any marring to the coating at all.
Fantastic.
So I gave it a thumbs up.
Cool. Let's take our favorite tools right now. Let's see how fast we can go ahead and knock out this little Porsche Boxer. This thing right here has got a ton of contamination. And one of the things we want to talk about is when you clay your vehicle, right? Well, it's really obvious when you touch your vehicle and you can hear like that. I mean, you can absolutely hear all of the contamination that's on the finish. On white, it's pretty easy to see the contaminants, little orange and black specks. A lot of it will be called rail dust, water stains, the mineral deposits that'll happen from sprinklers or just from, accidentally your car gets rinsed with the water and didn't exactly get dried. It'll pull that off. Anything else you guys want to talk about your clays before we move on to just getting her done?
Let's get it done.
Let's get her done. Come on, guys. I'll be the detail sprayer. You guys be the clayers. How's that? Before you decide to just blast the whole car down, make sure you can clay that entire area. Regardless of your clay choice, there's pros and cons to each of the clays. Regardless, claying your car is an absolutely critical part of your detailing process. People often ask, how often do you have to clay your vehicle? For me, it's something that goes kind of along with use. So about every single oil change will end up claying a vehicle. By about 2,000 or 3,000 miles, you will have parked next to someone who was spray painting their house. You might have parked next to some sprinklers that might have hit your car. You might have parked next to something industrial, some industrial activity that's shed some industrial fallout on your car. Now, if you go to the airport and you park your car outside exposed at the airport for a week and you go on vacation, when you come back, you're gonna wanna clay your car, okay? So it's exposure that induces the contamination. So every oil change is about how often that I like to go ahead and decontaminate the car. Another thing we can talk about while we're knocking this car out is the iron remover. We have a fallout remover, something that you actually spray chemically on the car that also takes all of that contamination off. However, it does not do anything for paint overspray. It doesn't do anything for other types of fallout like bird droppings and dead bug guts. A clay bar is required to do stuff like that. The back of your vehicle is likely going to be the most contaminated, especially if you're in a zone where it snows and you got real serious winter. All the crud is always going up and sticking to the back of your car. Now, when I like to clay a car, I want to start with the areas that are in the shade first. If I have to clay in the direct sunlight, I'm going to use like 4 or 5 times as much detail spray. The clay bars have a tendency to melt a little bit when they get really hot, so claying in the direct sunlight, not ideal. I'd rather wake up real early, do it in the morning or late in the afternoon so that you got some shade and some cover. So Scott, I just watched you go ahead and take that clay mitt and it was a little bit damp and you went ahead and wiped it on the towel.
I did.
Is that the way you like to keep it?
I do
Keep
that,
it clean.
I'll use it in a in a clean rinse bucket or my wash bucket.
Bingo.
And I want to dip it. I typically do it every if I take a panel, say this fender, I'll do it every half a panel or every panel. I'll dip it. I want to just make sure it's clean.
Yep.
I don't want to have any dirt or grit or anything in here.
Awesome.
The worst thing you want to do is have dirt and sand and just junk in your clay mitt as you're claying a vehicle. You're going to scratch the heck out of your surface.
Right on. Do you use the wash bucket, like your clean water wash bucket? Would you use that after you wash the car? Is that the kind of thing you use?
Yes, yeah, I would.
So little suds, you don't find it a hassle at all?
The more lubrication, the better.
Awesome. How many cars would you tell people that you get out of one of those bars, and at what point do you throw away the clay?
Go ahead, Dave.
With what I'm experiencing right now on this car, I may throw this car away or relegate it to wheels when I'm done just with this car on its own, if I was going to do this whole car with one clay bar. But that's just this car with this clay bar. I've had opportunities where I've been able to do as many as a dozen cars with the Visco clay bar. Depends on the condition of the paint of the car that I'm working on. This one's a little rougher, it's had a little more neglect. Some I may have into the shop, may be washed every week and clayed regularly, like you said, every oil change.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
So you think about a dozen cars
About a dozen.
on the high end, but if you do something really destroyed, you can destroy a clay bar in 1 or 2 vehicles.
Yes, but I will use it later either on glass, which is a lot harder than paint, or I'll use it on wheels. So there is still life left in it. I just don't want to touch the paint.
How about the fine grade? What do you find is the lifespan of that, and when do you throw it away?
Well, to Dave's point, after this vehicle, this is pretty much spent after just the half of the window and the few panels that I've done. But I'd probably say between 6 to 8 vehicles that are in decent shape. So it's not going to be quite as durable as a visco clay, but the one thing that I'm noticing, and it's a good recurring point between the two of us, is that we can tell what's on these clay bars and we can tell when it's actually spent. The cool part about the tool that Scott has is that it's reusable, it's able to be ringed out, and he can use it for wheels, paint, for windows, whatever he'd like to use, time after time after time. I'm gonna have to trash this because it's hurting me to put this on the paint time after time.
I find often what I can do is if the clay bar gets dirty, fold it into itself. If what I've just folded into the center is what the outside appears to be, it's spent.
Right.
If it's still looking white on the outside once I folded it, I'll continue using it.
I do the same thing. When I notice that this clay, after stretching it and folding it 3 or 4 times, is no longer sort of a off-white, and it starts to end up being medium gray or dark gray, there's too much crud in that bar, the bar is spent. I also find that sometimes when I'm pulling off heavy amounts of paint overspray, I actually took a clay bar and it went from off-white to green quick enough, and I'm like, that seemed to spin that bar a little quicker. Great input, guys.
Thank you.
So another thing that I found is that if this clay bar, as I'm using it, it'll stick to my wedding ring, it'll stick to the calluses on the hand. That's when you know it loses its integrity and it starts to break down and go to heck. I think that the fine grade bar does pretty much the same thing.
Absolutely.
It starts to lose its tackiness too.
It'll pull
Yeah,
apart.
it gets mushy. And as it's mushy, it doesn't pull the contamination off nearly as quickly as it needs to.